Hey guys, welcome back to Master Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we are going to go over a video that a couple of you requested. This is a how to maximize Shadow in the Warp. Now, Shadow in the Warp for the Tyranids is a complicated army special rule. It's not as straightforward as a power buff as other armies get, or it's not a tactical advantage just outright. There's a lot of luck in it, and there's a lot of tactical play of how you can actually maximize it to benefit you in the game. So that's what we're going to cover today. I've got like a checklist of what I look at when I want to battle shock, and then how to get the most out of it. Hopefully it's a good video for you guys. If you are excited for this, do like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our content here at Master Gaming Studios. Thank you to all of you members who continue to support us, allow us to make these videos. And now, oh wait, one more thing. If you're watching this on Monday when it's released, Tuesday, the next day at 4 p.m. my time, US Central Time, we are live streaming a battle report. It'll be the Necrons versus Tyranids. Connor and I are trying out some competitive tournament lists. Matchup you saw in a battle report a little bit ago. However, Connor's list is a bit different. Mine might have seen a few small tweaks, but we're playing and practicing for tournament, and we'll do a live stream battle report for you guys. So come along, have a fun time, enjoy some dice rolling and some wacky games, hopefully. And with that all, thank you guys, and let's dive into today's video. So a little bit of the overview for today's video. We're going to go over the core rules that entail Shadow in the Warp and stuff. We got some supporting units. There are 2 units specifically in the Tyranid Codex that kind of support the whole Shadow in the Warp abilities. Look at a little bit of the statistics around it, how to affect scoring, look at the missions because they do potentially play a big part in when you want to Shadow in the Warp, and a little bit of conclusion, which is kind of, I'll ramble a bit, I'll give you my checklist and so forth. So with that, let's dive into the core rules for today. So Shadow in the Warp is one of the 2 Tyranid army special rules. We have Synapse and we have Shadow in the Warp. And the way this works is once per battle in either player's command phase. Important wording right off the bat there is that this happens in the command phase, not at the start, not at the end, just during the command phase. So this happens before the actual battle shock step of the command phase. It happens before primary is scored, and then the controlling player determines the order if multiple things happen during the command phase. So if you were to use this on your opponent's command phase and they have a strat or something that says in the command phase, they would get to use that stuff before, and then they would do battle shock from Shadow in the Warp, and then they would go into the battle shock step of the command phase, and then it would be scoring and so on. So just a little couple keywords. That one simple sentence has a lot of implications, but they're good to talk about here. And then what it does, what Shadow in the Warp does, I already alluded to it, every enemy unit on the battlefield must take a battle shock test. The unit has to be on the battlefield, so they can't be in reserve, they can't be in a transport, anything like that. They have to be on the battlefield to take this test. So what battle shock is, because so we cause battle shock, whoop-de-doo, what does it do? So how it works is you roll 2d6, or your opponent does. If the result is equal to or greater than their leadership characteristic, the test is passed. Simple there. Now, if it has failed, which is where the fun stuff happens, the unit becomes OC 0. The unit cannot use any stratagems, and if they want to fall back, they must pass a desperate escape test in order to do so. This one doesn't come up as much in terms of just Tyranid play, but there are some ways to cause units to die or make your opponent think about it when it comes to making desperate escape tests. So that's the core rules. Now, there are 2 supporting units in the Tyranid Codex that really make this Shadow in the Warp go from a to a very good ability. And the first one is the Neuro Tyrant, the big bad that was showed off for the 10th edition launch box. What this thing has is the ability, along with all of its other rules, Psychic Terror. Now, Psychic Terror is if one or more Neuro Tyrants from your army on the battlefield, when you unleash Shadow in the Warp, subtract 1 from the battle shock test each enemy unit on the battlefield must take as a result. So this will show some statistics later, but essentially if your opponent has leadership 6, when they take this test, they basically play it as they have leadership 7. So that's pretty nice. It just amps up the statistics of how it could affect the game. Now, the next important unit is the Neurolictor, and I will have a video coming on Friday that is a Neurolictor deep dive, so more tactics and stuff around the Neurolictor will be coming. But for the sake of this video, what's important is the psychological saboteur aura ability, and that as well an enemy unit is within 12 inches of the model. If that enemy unit is battle shocked, each time a model and they makes an attack, they are -1 to hit. And each time a friendly Tyranid model makes an attack against that unit, add 1 to the wound roll. Now, Tyranids, we suffer in this codex from having pretty low strength. It was just shown off in the Tau codex that a Tau commander, Farsight, with his sword is strength 10, and our Norm emissaries are strength 9. So we suffer from a little bit of first codex syndrome, and most importantly for that is our stuff is just a bit weaker than really it should be. The Neurolictor will change all of that, getting +1 to wound against the targets that are battle shocked, really amps up our damage potential. Again, I'll get more into that in the Neurolictor deep dive coming on Friday, so subscribe to stay up to date on that one. But it's important to know that I think most Tyranid lists should have 2 of these in every at the points level. If they go down in points, 3 of them would be amazing, because they combo so well with our army special rule. Now, the odds of failing battle shock. You cannot rely on your opponent just failing the battle shocks you need to, because, oh, it's up to a dice roll. However, when you have to force your opponent to take enough of them, you can increase your odds statistically of them failing a test. So your basic test, everything in 40k is leadership 5 to 8. Maybe there's something at 9, I don't think so, but 5 to 8 is everyone's common leadership. If you just take your standard test, you got a 16.6% chance of failing the leadership at leadership 5, a 27.7% at leadership 6, a 41.6% at leadership 7, and a 58.3% at leadership 8. Now, if you add the Neurotyrant into here, you get that -1 to the test. You essentially just bump all of these up the bracket. So now it's about, it's 27.7 for leadership 5, 41.6 for leadership 6, 58.3 for leadership 7, and if you fight something that has leadership 8, like other Tyranids, a 72.2, almost a 25% chance of them passing only. So that's great there. Now, again, you can't rely on a specific unit failing, but most armies, when they're playing, they have 10 to 15 units on the battlefield. You're going to get a number of battle shocks that go off, and enough rolls will eventually cause your opponent, just by sheer statistics, to fail some of them. You can couple this with other ways to cause battle shocks. We have a number of units, I'm not going to go into them here, but a number of units like the Neurolictor, like the Screamer Killer, like Death Leaper, that can cause battle shock in different places, and that just adds on to the weight of dice your opponent are rolling and eventually fail one of these tests. It's also important to note that there is no cap to how many battle shock tests you can take based on different abilities. So you could Shadow in the Warp someone, make them take a battle shock. You could hit him with a Neurolictor, take a battle shock. You could hit him with another Neurolictor, battle shock. They have to take their standard end of command phase battle shock. There's another one, Screamer Killer, battle shock. Again, just the weight of dice. Eventually you'll get to your opponent failing the battle shocks, which add up. Now, how can we use this causing battle shocks to affect the scoring of the game? So in the primary game, this is probably the biggest when it comes to scoring, is if you use it in your command phase. Let's say you've got a few units on an objective and your opponent has a few units and they're in control of the objective there. If you use it, you could potentially flip that objective. Because they come OC0, you could go from having 5 primary points to 10 to 15 primary points, depending on what the mission is. So that's a great option there. You can use it to stop your opponent from scoring primary. Let's say they've got a mission, you see their secondary deck, you see what they have for primary, and you realize it is super crucial that the opponent takes this objective. This objective is worth 10 points, maybe more, something like that. You could go for trying to cause battle shock on their turn, and then they will have to try some weird things to get that objective because they can't do it because the unit you were planning on is battle shocked. Again, it's not guaranteed, but it's something to look at there. I prefer doing it on my command phase first because then I can benefit from the Neurolictor buffs to cause damage. But there are instances where that is the most crucial time I need to do it. We're going to cause it and then go from there. And they're still going to be battle shocked. If you battle shock them in your opponent's turn, they will still be battle shocked through your next turn, which will allow you to still benefit from the Neurolictors, but it's more of a reactive than an all-out aggressive play. Both have options there. Now, when I'm talking about primary missions, we're going to take a look at 5 primary missions that, in my experience of the many tournaments I've played here in 10th edition, these are the common 5 missions you'll probably see at all of the tournaments. Maybe there's a few other fun ones like the ritual or stuff that come up, but for simplicity's sakes, we'll look at these 5 and see what you can do. So take and hold, nice and simple. Hold 1, hold 2, hold 3. There could be a key moment where your opponent has 3 objectives, and if you deny Shadow in the Warp, or if you use Shadow in the Warp and potentially deny them those 3 points, they go from 15 to 5 or to 0 primary. Could be good. Or likewise, you could flip the objective, so you go from having only 5 primary to 15, gives you a big jump in the advantage that way. Sites of Power is a hold a number of objectives. You get 3 points for each of them. If you have characters on the No Man's Land objectives, you get an additional 3 points for each of those. If your opponent has a crazy turn set up where they've got, a character on every objective, you might want to think about doing the battle shock there and causing those characters to fail battle shock, which would deny them secondary points there, as well as maybe if they're battle shocked, they would be easier to kill because now you can get your Neurolictors in there. Again, just things to think about here. Perch the Foe. There's not as much that comes into play with this one because it's a hold 1, hold more, kill 1, kill more. But there might be a turn 2 or 3, where if you you have everything lined up where you can flip an objective to gain hold more, and it allow you to get kill 1 and kill more just by having the right battle units be battle shocked. That's probably going to happen on turn 2 or 3, and getting both kill more and hold more and kill more in the same turn is a huge jump in the primary game in that one. Vital Ground is the one where you remove the center objective and then you're playing with only 4 objectives. It's one of my favorite. It really adds a weird element to the game because you kind of want to avoid the middle. There's not a huge primary portion for this one. Maybe if your opponent or you could control 3 primary is good because primary scoring in this is very low. So maybe one big turn of controlling 3 primary or denying your opponent 3 primary could be something that flips the game in your favor. And finally, the most important one is priority targets. So this is a hold 1, hold 2, and then at the end of the game, you get 5 points for every objective you control. If this mission is drawn or is playing in the game, I try my absolute hardest to hold my Shadow in the Warp until turn 5. Because if in turn 5, I can cause what remaining units that are on the battlefield to be battle shocked by my opponent, you can deny them up to 25 victory points on the end of the game. And that could be enough to keep you in the lead or deny you. Because of the way it happens in this mission is that they don't score it, they score the bonus points at the end of the game, but they still score normally. So if your opponent only has 3 or 4 units left that could be in range of the objectives, and you just get 1 or 2 battle shocks off on those units, there you go. That wins you the game. It's not a guarantee, but it's the single most primary scoring way. It is the biggest effect on primary that will ever happen probably with Shadow in the Warp. So I really do like to save it for that one just about every time. Again, it doesn't work every time, but I have played a number of games where that has sealed me the victory or stole the victory from me because they couldn't score those. I was able to score them. It's a great option there. And then finally, we wrap this one up here. This is just my checklist going over. Hopefully I didn't go through this too fast on you guys. So my little 5-step checklist I have here. First, I check the mission. Is it priority targets? If it is, again, like I said, I like to hold that to the end. If it's any of the other ones, then I kind of go to step 2, which is there a turn, likely turn 2 or 3, where I can maximize in my turn, flipping enough primary objectives, while at the same time having my opponent have enough enemies exposed that I can benefit from killing. So maybe if it's a pretty aggressive game, turn 2, this will happen, but more often than not, it's a turn 3 thing for me, the more I think about it here. The battle's already commenced. You can put your units where they need to go, less things on the table, more battle shocks to go around. Turn 3 is typically when that happens. And then if there's nothing like that, is there a turn in my turn where I can flip a couple objectives to my advantage, give me a good primary boost? Typically, if I can do that, that helps me. And then step 4 would be, is there a turn where my opponent is set up to score a ton of points and I need to be pretty desperate to call Shadow in the Warp and deny them the potential to score all those points? If that's the turn, great. And finally, the one I really don't like to use Shadow in the Warp for, but I'll admit there have been times when I've done it, is there a key enemy unit that I need to kill? Is there a huge block of Terminators or a big scary tank or something that is barreling down at my forces? And if I can kill them, that would swing the game big in my favor. Sometimes that happens, but again, it's not great to use Shadow in the Warp just to try and battle shock a specific unit. You really want to have multiple options available when you do this. But I understand sometimes things happen. Maybe your opponent is charging a knight at you, and it's one of those lancers that is just going full speed to your enemy lines. If you can battle shock it, it becomes much easier to take out and a lot less threatening to deal with. So I recognize those changes. So that's hopefully gives you a good understanding of how I look at Shadow in the Warp when I'm playing my game. I don't sit there with my checklist and I go, okay, check, check, check. It's more of a mental thing, but still it's important to think about when do you Shadow in the Warp. You don't just want to burn it turn 2 and say, ooh, I battle shocked a bunch of things, but you can't capitalize on it. You really want to be able to capitalize on it when you do it so you can get the biggest bang out of this army roll. If you build your list correctly with a bunch of Neurolictors and the Neuro Tyrant, and then, you've got the right shooting and melee and threat, everything, Shadow in the Warp can be the most powerful secondary or most powerful special rule in the game if the dice go in your favor. If your opponent has a bad set of dice rolls where the front line of their army is all battle shock and you can go in and just clean up primary and clean up the enemy units, it's huge. And I will admit, there are games out there where your opponent, they roll 15 battle shock tests all at -1 and they only fail 1 or 2, and the ones they fail are some chaff units screening out the backline. It happens. It's unfortunate the way GW has made the rule that it is such a random thing, but we have to be able to capitalize the best we can. It is a dice game after all. So that's my thought process. Hopefully you kind of learned something. Maybe think about this going forward into your next games. Let me know. If there's anyone else who's got something maybe I missed, put it in the comments below. Again, we're Hive Mind community, I'm trying to help everybody out, especially the new players. Shadow in the Warp is something that you really got to think about to maximize. So that's what I got. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.